To create animation in Photoshop, you can use the timeline. So if you can't see this down here at the bottom, go up to Window, Timeline. It may look a little bit different. There may be a little button here asking you if you want to use frame animation or timeline animation. You want to use frame animation. Frame or timeline animation will look something like this, like Adobe Animate. You're welcome to try to use that, but I'm going to show you how to do frame animation. So just click on this button to take us back to the frames. So remember, each frame is a key movement in the animation. So looking at the layers, you can see everything is on its own layer. So there's a 3, 2, 1 launch, there's a flame, and then there's the rocket ship. So I want to do the countdown, I want the flame to ignite, and then I want the spaceship to fly up off of the top of the frame. So this first frame, I'm going to turn off the flame, the 3, the 2, the 1, and the launch. Actually, I'm going to keep the 3 on because I'm going to begin my countdown here. I'm going to do a new frame. That's this little button right down here in the timeline. And I'm going to turn off the 3 and turn on the 1, do a new frame, turn off the 2, do a 1, do a new frame, turn off the 1, and do launch, do a new frame. I'm going to turn off launch. You can keep it on. This is just for practice. And I'm going to have the flame ignite. And then I'm going to do a new frame, and I want the rocket ship and the flame to go up the page. So I'm going to hold shift while selecting both of those layers. You may need to make sure that auto select is turned off up here in the top left hand corner, and holding shift on both of these layers kind of links them or groups them together. And then I'm going to move this up the page. I'm going to hold shift as I do it just so I don't kind of move around when I do this. And I'm going to have this just go off the edge of the frame, but not completely. I need to have it stay in the frame a little bit. So if I go back to frame 1, right now these are all at 5 seconds. So this is going to be really, really choppy and take a really long time. I'm going to hit that play button. It's going to take 5 seconds for each one of these to move. So I'm going to change that because I can already see it's way too long. So I'm going to hold shift while I select each of these frames. And then just underneath it is your time for each frame. So let's try 1 second. Let's see what that does. And I'm going to hit play. That's faster, but still I think it could be a little bit faster. So again, I'm going to change my frames to, let's try half a second. Let me get all of those to half a second. Again, we'll start at frame 1. That seems pretty good for the countdown. 3, 2, 1, launch. Doesn't feel too fast, doesn't feel too slow. I can see some movement in the rocket ship, but it's very choppy, right? It just goes from the bottom to the top. So what I want to do is I want to select frame 5 and frame 6. So I'm holding shift while I do this, and I want to put some frames in between these so that I get a smoother animation. So we're going to do what's called tweening, and tweening just means putting frames in between. So that button is right here, and if you hold your mouse over it, it should say Tweens Animation Frames. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to ask me how many frames I want to add, and you just have to kind of experiment with this. I'm just going to start out with 5 frames. When I hit OK, you'll notice that 5 additional frames will show up in my timeline. And then you'll see that in the little thumbnails that the animation moves up. So now I'm going to hit play. Again, everything's at half a second right now. Little jumpy for the movement of the rocket ship, but it's fine for the countdown. So I'm going to go to frame 5, which is where my animation of my rocket ship starts. I'm going to hold shift and select to frame 11. So all of those frames. I'm going to change this to maybe like 0.2 or 0.1 seconds. I'm going to hit 0.2 to start out with. I'm going to go back to frame 1. I'm going to hit play. And notice now I have a much smoother animation. Again, if I want even smoother animation, I can add more frames and I can adjust the time as well. But this is doing pretty much what I want it to do. Then down here, I can either have it play once when I export it, 3 times, or it can play forever on a loop and just keep going over and over and over again. So that's going to depend on how you want to make your animation play. To export this, I'm going to go to File, Export, Save for the web, because GIFs are intended for the web. Now it knows it's an animation, so it will should automatically save it as a GIF. I'm going to go ahead and hit Save. Tell it where I want to save it. I'm just going to save mine to my desktop. I've already had one there, so it's asking me to replace it. And then you can drag that into Figma. But to see this play, I have to drag it into a web browser. So if I drag this into like Google Chrome, then, oops, try that again. If I drag this into Google Chrome, then it should play in my web browser. And then if you want to add this to Figma, you can just drag it into Figma onto one of your screens.